This is Update One, the podcast of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Update One provides a forum for listeners to learn about national and international stories, focusing on journalism and communication issues, news, and politics. Now, the latest edition of Update One.
I'm Sarah Dolezal, a National Press Club member and a member of the Broadcast Podcast Committee at the National Press Club. Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Tudor Vlad, who is the director of the James M. Cox Jr. Center for International Mass Communication Training and Research at the University of Georgia. Dr. Vlad has worked with Dr. Lee Becker at the annual Surveys of Journalism and Mass Communication, a unique project that has provided data every year about trends in journalism and mass communication education and the media industry labor market. Also, that Dr. Becker and Dr. Vlad are the authors of the 2018 book, The Changing Education for Journalism and the Communication Occupations, The Impact of Labor Markets. The findings of the Changing Education Journalism pretty much go back 30 years. Welcome, Dr. Vlad. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and talk about journalism education. I think it's a hot topic.
So first, can you tell me about your research on trends seen throughout journalism as a profession and in higher ed?
Well, this has been a very important project for journalism and journalism education in the United States. It started in the form that we had in the late 80s at the Ohio State University, where Dr. Becker actually adapted two surveys of journalism graduates and of journalism enrollments. Then these surveys moved to the University of Georgia, and I have been involved in these annual surveys for 18 years. The graduate survey shows what happens with journalism graduates in their first year after graduation every year, and we are talking about a sample that reflects all the about 480 schools of journalism in the United States. While the second survey, the enrollment survey that I had been in charge with, was, as we called it, a census. We interviewed every year all the 480 administrators, deans, directors of all these journalism programs to see trends in enrollments, in curriculum, in faculty size, and faculty gender race. So all this information. So this gives picture of what has happened in journalism education in the last 30 plus years, and also it shows the relationship between journalism and mass communication education and the media market.
And when you say it goes back 30 years, it seems like also some of those trends have to do with in relation to gender trends. Is that correct then?
Absolutely. We've had every year questions about student gender and race and faculty gender and race. Yes, we have all this information. Absolutely.
When I reviewed some of the data, it seems that more women enter journalism degrees programs more than men, yet more of them are hired by news organizations afterwards. Can you tell me why that trend is occurring or has occurred in the past?
I will make a very strong statement. I would say that based on our data, and maybe I'm taking some risks here, but based on our data, had the journalism program not embraced advertising and public relations, half of these programs would be dead by now. And the reason is that these PR and advertising specializations have attracted women. So the decline in number of students enrolled in the journalism specialization has been compensated by the increase in number of women who have been enrolled mostly in public relations and advertising. And you are absolutely right. More than 66, maybe 68% of the undergraduate students in journalism and mass communication programs in the country are women, while about 66 to 68% in the master's programs are women. And now, in the last 10 years, even the number of women enrolled in doctoral programs has been higher than men, about 60%.
Does that change have anything to do with maybe some of the diversity inclusion programs that perhaps have occurred as well over the last 10 years? Or is that strictly, they're just women are more attracted to PR and advertising, or is there anything to that?
I think that women are more attracted by ad and PR programs. That would be the first explanation. But I can also confirm that there have been efforts to increase the number of minority students. And those numbers have increased, but not at the rhythm that we had expected. Still, the number of minority students does not reflect the percentage of minority population in the regions.
So they're not totally representative of what the reality is outside of the programs.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right.
Okay. And can you tell me about maybe how these minority students are being promoted after they graduate into the profession?
What our findings show is that minority students get jobs a little better in terms of percentages compared to the white graduates. But again, the numbers are smaller. And if we talk about increases in percentages of minority students, there has been an increase for almost all the minority students. The most significant has been for Asian American students, followed by African American students, and then by Spanish-speaking students.
That's interesting. And so coming into today, with the economy tanking and companies not hiring as much, do you think this will result in more female students enrolling in journalism and PR graduate programs as well? Or do you see the trend continuing?
I think the trend will continue. I think the number of women enrolled in programs will be somewhere between 66 and 70% for the reasons that I've just mentioned. Obviously, things are evolving. You remember between 2007 and 2009, because of the global crisis, economic global crisis, about 10,000 journalists lost their jobs in the United States, mostly in newspapers. And, that has been an alarm for young people who wanted to enroll in journalism mass communication programs. But what our numbers show, again, is that the decline has been in the, let's say, traditional journalism specializations, and has been at least in part compensated by a slight increase in public relations and advertising. What also the numbers show is that usually at the undergraduate level, the number of students enrolled in the programs is not affected by the changes in the media market. While at the master's programs, whenever the media industry is strong, the number of students enrolled in master's programs goes down. And when the market is weak, the number of students enrolled in master's programs goes up. And it makes sense because students decide to stay a little longer in school when they know that the market is not so good and the likelihood for them to get a good job is not so high.
And so with a master's degree, there's probably an increased chance of getting a better job afterwards. Is that the correct assumption then?
Yes. What our surveys have constantly shown is that graduates with a master's degree find usually better jobs and are better paid in the first year after graduation. The difference is about $4,000 per year as an average. But remember, we always have data for their first year after graduation, and some colleagues and some scholars have asked us why we do not continue tracking them. And the simple explanation is that we have not had the resources to do it.
And then kind of jumping into also more of the coronavirus outbreak topic, do you think that with students coming back in the fall, that it would also affect how classes are taught? Because I know some classes need to be kind of in person depending on what you're studying. So do you see any online classes being offered, and can you tell me how that would change some of the courses? This
is a great question, and if I had a good answer, I would be very happy. What I can tell you is that in the spring semester this year, we moved everything online. And we have been able to continue the education, and, I'm more concerned about schools like chemistry or physics, where there's a lot of lab work about how they handle that. But obviously, in the long term, if we think about, students with a broadcast specialization, we need to have them in the classes. We need to have them produce, newscasts as they do at the University of Georgia. It is a challenge, and we have to be ready now for a variety of ways to deliver the classes. It is a major, major challenge, and we do not know yet how the fall semester will look like. Obviously, we hope to have our students back, but we also have to think about the risks and about alternative delivery.
I'm sitting here speaking with you, doing a podcast online, we're not physically present. So do you feel also that something like podcasting or other modes of communication like this would be effective online for temporary reasons, perhaps, just until maybe the risk kind of blows over?
Right. I think we have to be ready to use alternative ways to teach our classes. And I also think that we have to find ways to make these alternative teaching attractive to our students. I don't want our students to be frustrated. It's a challenge. I mean, when you walk through the campus and you see it empty, it's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I know at UGA there's thousands and thousands of students on campus, and that's what attracts a lot of students to University of Georgia is because of that campus climate. So it's totally different to return to school again and have that impact of not having the students around or not having the classes going on as normal.
Right.
Even if you're providing the classes, it's still not the same in some ways. So.
Right. It's this campus culture that everybody is missing.
Do you have anything else to add about the subject, about gender trends or how things are coming into the future? Or
what I think is important is to mention that this trend in terms of women enrolled in journalism and mass communication programs is not only in the United States. We have gathered some data from Europe, and we found that it's almost the same percentage of women at the undergraduate and graduate level. So it's a global trend, I would say. I think that is very important. And I think that is also very important is that the education in journalism and mass communication has always been very strongly related to the job market. The way the schools of journalism have always legitimized themselves was that they were able to provide good jobs to their graduates. And this is very, very important. And I think if we want to predict what will happen in journalism education in the future, we want to look about what has happened in the past. And what the past has shown is that those schools who have been able to adapt or even to anticipate the changes in the industry have been the most successful in attracting students and providing good jobs to their graduates. So that will continue. The schools of journalism, if they want to survive, have to be innovative and have to perceive the field of mass communication in the broadest possible sense.
Well, on that note, we can wrap up now, but thank you very much for joining us again at National Press Club today.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure and an honor to talk with you.
For Update 1, I'm Sarah Dolezal.
Update 1 is a production of the National Press Club's Broadcast Podcast Committee. You can comment on this podcast or any episode of Update 1 by sending an email to update1podcast, that's update, 1 podcast, @gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Update 1.